Hey everyone, Wonton back here to bring you another tournament match featuring Ivankov versus Kid. Ivankov is one of the more interesting leaders in the game. If you're not sure what he does, if you have zero cards in your hand, at the end of your turn you get to draw two. He won the high roll, and so he chose to go first, as Kid typically does want to do. And I think in this matchup, that is the correct choice as well, because this matchup is defined by whoever maintains tempo and board control, since neither side really has great comeback mechanics. So on my first turn, I dropped the Perona just to see what I would be able to fish out, and I dropped the Buggy afterwards. And the good thing I dropped the Perona first because I believe I have nothing pullable by Buggy. So the strategy of Ivankov is to just defend super aggressively. You counter everything that's counterable. So you can see here, I use 1,000 to just block off that early attack by Kid. And you just want to dump your hand and you want to maintain tempo. And that is the most important thing of this deck. And that's what this deck does best as well. Just maintaining tempo and fighting for that board control. And to help with that, you have cards like Mr. 3, where he lets you attack on your turn and lets you restand him at the end of your turn at the cost of one card in your hand, which isn't even a real disadvantage because that's typically what you just want to do with this deck, anyways. Again, here I'm just countering out whatever his attacks are, making sure nothing gets through if I can prevent it. In my hand, I had an Ivankov and two Luffys, and the typical combo is to play Ivankov and summon Luffy out using Ivankov's effect. But because I was only at 6 Dawn, I don't think waiting an extra turn just to get that value play was the correct one here. I think the better play was to just tempo out Luffy, playing him on curve, and just bouncing the Okiku back, making sure that I have a stronger board and preparing myself for the upcoming turns, making it more dangerous for him to drop his heavy hitters like one of the kids or Odin. And in case you were wondering, I believe that the correct ruling when you have multiple end of turn effects is that you get to choose which one triggers first. So in this case, I choose to trigger Ivankov's ability first, letting me draw two cards, and then triggering Mr. Threes, which lets me restand him while discarding a card. If we somehow misunderstood or got the ruling wrong, please do let me know in the comments down below. And because this deck runs a lot of counters on a lot of its characters, and because of your ability to refill your hand so easily, it does make it easy to defend against small amounts of damage like this. It does cost your opponent a lot more dawn to commit in order to get attacks through. He drops Okiku and Raizo, which are strong mid-game cards. Fortunately, I didn't really have any good targets for Okiku to rest other than Mr. 3, which I could defend using the counters in my hand, or I'm happy to give away if he commits enough Dawn to killing him. And even though this deck is a tempo deck, it does go fast, that sometimes it feels like an aggro deck sometimes, where you're always just firing neutral, going 5,000 to 5,000, just making them burn cards from their hand in order to protect their characters or protect their life total, keeping themselves healthy, and at the same time keeping your board wide like this because of your ability to constantly refill your hand. And it is important to use your counters to protect your characters as well and not just save them for your life, since the important thing here is to maintain your tempo and board control, and you can't do that with an empty board. And I think what this deck's biggest weakness is its lack of a finisher like 6 cost Luffy or Odin or 9 cost Kaido, something that just help you close out your games. And as a result, it's really important to maintain a board and board control and tempo just to make sure you have as much opportunity as possible to take as many chip shots at their life as you can. until you're able to just slap on a bunch of Dawn and just go for an all-out attack to finish them off. My opponent does do a good job here, getting rid of some of my characters and getting rid of some of the bigger threats like Mr. 3 and Luffy. And he was able to fill up his board as well with his own Okiku and Beige. So at this point of the game, it was still pretty close because we were still fighting for that board. And one thing to note is that because you're always dumping your hand, you're always at zero and refilling it with your effect, and you'll only usually have a maximum of 2 cards in your hand, which makes it easy for them to do the math, making it a little bit easier for them to trade into your characters because at the very most, you can only have 4,000 worth of counters in your hand unless you run events. And as you can see here, just continuing with what we've been doing this whole time, just making sure we get as many attacks in as possible. And that includes putting 3,000 on both Perone and Buggy, making sure 5,000, letting us maximize our wider board here. And with Mihawk, the math worked out perfectly. And again, just countering out every attack we can. And here he drops Kid, which has been the bane of Blue's existence since the game has started. Typically, Blue has a very hard time getting through to Kid. They don't have enough heavy hitters to land any effective shots at him. And here I'm just prioritizing Alvida as another body to be able to swing with in the future rather than as a 2,000 counter. Take a 9k swing at Kid, and because we were able to get rid of a lot of the counters early on in the match, he wasn't actually able to defend Kid. I think I would have used Beige to maybe block that first attack, making me use a little bit more Dawn to get rid of Kid here, and also preventing me from getting an extra swing using Perona. And here the game plan continues. We just keep clearing his board, make sure we have an iron grip on the board. And because of how swingy of a game One Piece is and how board reliant these two decks are, I think the safer approach there was to just clear their board while we can, and making sure that they can't just at the flip of a switch just defend against our attack, and at the same time turn it around and clear our board, just flipping the board state just like that. He recognizes that even a small character like Perona is still a threat, so opts to get the guaranteed kill on them rather than trying to go for a higher powered character. Drops the Kid in Beige, just hoping to turtle up here. Luckily for me, I had the Mihawk in hand, which lets me just deal with that Kid super cleanly, as 7-drop Kid is just the juiciest target for Mihawk. And because he lost so much board control and tempo there in the last 2 turns, he eventually just conceded here, since it was very unlikely he was going to be able to come back, especially after that Mihawk. He played it very well, and it was very back and forth up until the end there. But in the end, Ivankov's ability to just constantly refill your hand, protect yourselves with an endless stream of counters, and giving you the chance to also refill your board as your characters get destroyed, just proved to be too much and just overwhelmed them. And that's it for me. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll talk to you guys later.